Okay,
Okay, this is Sharon Layton and Dr. Richard Honor, and we're here to discuss biosolids or biosludge. Dr. Honor has had lots of experience with dealing with it, and he's also been in Toledo 3 times talking about the problem. So Dr. Honor, if you could please define biosolids or biosludge for the audience.
okay, yeah. In the first case, biosludge is a recently contrived term by someone in Texas, and it has no meaning. He was just trying to create some public interest in himself in the world of environmental work, but it has no meaning other than his own personal use. The other term, biosolids, is also a wholly contrived term whereby the state of Washington Department of Ecology, along with King County and the Northwest Biosolids Management Association, they had to come up with a term, as I was told directly and personally, to overcome the yuck factor of sewage sludge. So they worked with a marketing firm and came up with the term biosolids. And ever since that happened, it has been forced down the throats of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the Washington State Department of Ecology, and almost every entity in North America that has a wastewater treatment plant that generates wastewater effluent and the solid product. In my groups all over the US and in some other countries, we've adopted the term toxic sewage sludge because the original definitions that came out of the Environmental Protection Agency were that the solids that come out of any wastewater treatment plant or publicly owned treatment works in the United States is sludge. And sludge, the second part of it is, sludge is solid waste. So whether it's a wastewater treatment plant or a publicly owned treatment works, or even a dairy solid waste containment facility where their cow manures go, or whether it's a petroleum refinery, such as some that we have in Washington State, like BP and Phillips and so on, when they get crude oil, what comes out of the bottom of it, what settles, is also called sludge. It is refinery sludge. And whether you're in the animal agricultural business, such as chickens, which is one of the major animal human food crops in the world and in the US, or whether it's pigs for pork or cows for beef, what comes out of their lagoons and holding tanks and processing facilities, the solids that precipitate out, are known as sludge. Every other term for it is contrived with the intent of fooling the public into thinking that it is something worthwhile. And while animal manures have great use as fertilizers on all kinds of prairies and farmlands, sewage sludge that comes out of a human use wastewater treatment plant originates from several major sources. One is municipal waste, meaning toilets, sinks, shower drains. And there's also industrial waste that comes out of factories and manufacturing plants. And then the most toxic of all is known as stormwater runoff. And stormwater runoff is by intent also collected in various drain systems and stormwater retention ponds, and then sent by pipe to the very same wastewater treatment plants. So when you think of a wastewater treatment plant, such as the major ones in the Seattle area, you're talking about 3 major plants. One is in Woodinville that treats northern King County and South Snohomish County. One is at West Point, Seattle, and one is at South Point, Renton. The two lesser volume wastewater treatment plants in King County are in Carnation, and the other is on Vashon Island. Collectively, those 5 plants combine what are called combined sewage flows, and that includes what we just discussed, and that is stormwater runoff, the most toxic of all, plus domestic waste from homes and many businesses, and then also industrial wastes that come from medical centers and manufacturing plants, and it all goes into one place. And as you can imagine, the quality, meaning the kinds of what materials go in, are a function of where they're located and the populations and businesses they serve. So what is sewage sludge? Sewage sludge, in my definition, is toxic sewage sludge called TSS. And people now all over the US and Canada and in some areas of Europe are trying to get rid of the term biosolids and promise to never use the term biosludge. And they're wholly adopting the term toxic sewage sludge because that's what it is. The US EPA said it is sludge. And because it is sewage sludge. And because it is toxic, we then refer to it as TSS, or toxic sewage sludge. There isn't any sewage sludge from any source on this earth that is not toxic. So toxic, why is it toxic? Toxic is a term that implies that any or all of, or some of, the materials that end up in a wastewater treatment plant or publicly owned treatment works cause damage, toxicity, even death of cells, tissues, or whole organisms, whether they are bacteria, fungi, algae, plants, animals in general, and human specific. There isn't any sewage sludge from any wastewater treatment plant or from any publicly owned treatment works that is not toxic to human and other life forms. The fact that it is toxic means we're referring to materials. Collectively, toxins and toxicants are collectively referred to as toxics. And toxics, by definition, in any toxicology environment, means that it kills things, it injures things, it harms things, it makes them sick, it kills or injures cells or tissues or whole life forms, be they microbial, plant, or animal. So from that point, we then get to wonder why a wastewater treatment plant such as West Point, Seattle, would take its tens of thousands of tons of sewage sludge from the Seattle area each year and put it in double dump trucks and haul it to the Snoqualmie forest for spreading in our forests, which then, because of all the high rainfall, leaches and flows the toxics from these toxic sewage sludges into our surface and groundwaters, into our wetlands, into our streams, into our rivers, and into either the Pacific Ocean or Puget Sound, including the greater Salish Sea. And in Washington State, that same scenario of forest disposed sludge goes from Canada to Oregon. Toxic sewage sludge is generated in wastewater treatment plants from Canada to Oregon, and from the crest of the Cascades to the Pacific Ocean. It all goes into our sensitive salmon streams and orca, whale, breeding grounds, and it is one of the most detrimental substances known and practices known that adversely impact our critical salmon populations and our orca whale populations, plus many more life forms. That's what sewage sludge is, and that's where it comes from. In the state of Washington, for example, we have over 400 listed, registered, approved wastewater treatment plants. Personally, I think the number is bigger, but some of the plants will not register with the state because they don't want to be inspected. So there are recalcitrant communities in Washington state that do not register their wastewater treatment plants or publicly owned treatment works. That's why the number is bigger than 400. Of the 400, we know that at least, as stated by the Washington State Department of Ecology, even recently, more than 100 of those 400 drain and flow to Puget Sound. And if anyone wonders why our salmon and orca populations are in danger, you need look no further, because state agency scientists, as well as our scientists who work at NASA and NOAA and the National Marine Fisheries Service and the Fish and Wildlife Services, both national and state and county, they all know and they all report that the primary cause for the decline of our salmon populations and orcas is based on the materials that flow from our wastewater treatment plants and publicly owned treatment works in Washington state. Of course, there are other sources of pollution of our waters that in some cases, they're managed very well, but some still gets away. And that's from the agricultural industry itself, whether they are anaerobic digesters associated with the dairy industry, for example, or refinery sludges that are contained in lagoons and ponds at the site of our refineries. I know this because I've been there, I've inspected them, I've walked them with their executives and managers. So it isn't something to be denied. It's something to review and evaluate based on the level of responsibility that industry or agencies take in managing, treating, or controlling the flow of these wastes as they go into our critical surface and groundwaters and Puget Sound, all of the Salish Sea. Is that enough of an answer?
I think so.